Hello, Duke fans. Welcome in to the Duke Blue Devils Insider Podcast, your daily podcast for all things Duke Blue Devils news. We thank you for joining us here today, as well as every day, to get your latest on the Duke Blue Devils. My name is Hugh Streen, your daily host, as well as beat writer at Duke Blue Devils on SI. Happy to chat with you guys every single day. So the Duke basketball program, as most Duke fans know at this point and have seen and is hopefully recovering from at this point, Duke fell in crushing fashion on Saturday night to North Carolina, 71-68, and in Chapel Hill, a buzzer-beating three by UNC guard Seth Trimble sent the fans into a frenzy, as you may expect, and handed Duke its first loss in ACC play. Duke now 23-2 overall, 10-1 in league play. This is being recorded on February 10th. Duke set to take on Pitt on Tuesday night when this is being recorded. But I think most can expect Duke to pull out a win against the Panthers on the road. Tip-off for that game is at 9 p.m. Pitt, one of the worst teams in not really only the ACC, but in Power Conference basketball altogether. One of the weakest teams in the ACC, and a team that Duke should not have much of a problem taking down. Pitt currently 9-15 overall, 2-9 in league play, tied for the worst record in ACC play. It's lost 6 of its last 7 games. Feels like a game where Duke can kind of get back on track, sort of get its mind right after such a devastating blow in a game where Duke controlled it really the entire way. Again, for anyone who hasn't watched our shows over the past few days where we broke this game down, Duke held double-digit leads in both halves against North Carolina, outscored the Heels 36-22 in paint points, only committed 8 turnovers. Still, UNC found a way to come back in the final 5-6 minutes of the game. Sophomore center Pat Gungba fouled out with about 6 minutes to go, and that really took a toll on the Blue Devils, forced Malik Brown to be really the only strict 5-man that Duke had, and he had already picked up 4 fouls by the time Gungba fouled out, so really kind of limited the defensive intensity Duke could play with down low. And again, just all the credit in the world to North Carolina, took Duke down, handed Duke its second loss of the 2025-26 campaign. In the grand scheme of things in the resume, it did not do very much to hurt Duke whatsoever. Duke remained at number 4 in the AP poll. Duke is number 3 in the NCAA net rankings, still regarded as one of the top teams in the country, still a projected number 1 seed in the NCAA tournament. Not a ton of movement on that line. Still feels like Arizona, Michigan, and Duke are the 3 kind of locked in 1 seeds. UConn, after losing to St. John's over the weekend, now in question. And UConn right now kind of feels like they're in a similar position to Duke was last season. The Big East is extremely weak this season. Not a lot of marquee games in conference play for the Huskies to add to their schedule, which makes losses that much more meaningful. Granted, UConn lost to St. John's on the road. St. John's definitely the second best team in the Big East, and is turning into, after being one of the most disappointing teams in the country through really the first half of the season, is turning into a team that could make a serious run in March. UConn falls on the road to the Red Storm over the weekend. But still, it's both those teams are ranked in the AP poll, both fairly comfortable tournament teams. But outside of those two, there is not much depth in the Big East this season, which leaves a lot of room for UConn to slip up and drop off the 1 seed line. Kind of feels like in that conversation for the 4th 1 seed, it's UConn and Houston right now. Big 12 has been by far the best conference in college basketball so far this season. It feels like you can make a strong case for all 4 1 seeds, or at least 3 of them, to come out of the Big 12 with so many dominant teams. You got Kansas, Iowa State, you got Houston, you got Arizona, BYU, even if you want to factor them in. There's so many teams out of the Big 12 that have been so good this season, and they're playing these heavyweight matchups night in and night out. But anyway, let's get back to the Blue Devils. So Duke, I think we can assume, will take down Pittsburgh. A win will not move the needle much in terms of their resume, their overall body of work. However, a loss would be absolutely detrimental. It is just a quad 2 game for the Blue Devils as the net rankings currently stand, but any loss outside of quadrant 1 can do heavy damage to a team's top 1 or 2 seed hopes in the NCAA tournament. So an opportunity for Duke to kind of get back into its groove, pick up another victory, improve to 11-1 in league play, and sort of shake off that loss to the Tar Heels. So we mentioned Pitt has lost 6 of its last 7 games. It's currently ranked 107th at KenPom and number 123 in the net. Only Boston College and Georgia Tech are ranked lower in the net out of the ACC. Still have yet to earn a quadrant 1 victory on the season. The Panthers do. 9-15 overall, like we mentioned. They're 0-9 in quad 1, 2-12 across the first 2 quadrants, 2-2 in quad 3, 5-1 in quad 4. Panthers have suffered losses to teams such as Hofstra, Boston College, and Quinnipiac. And Pitt is just 7-8 at home on the season. So we mentioned just a quadrant 2 game for the Blue Devils, but one that they absolutely have to have to remain in that firm 1 seed discussion in the NCAA tournament. Again, quadrant 1 losses won't do that much damage. Like we mentioned, this really didn't hurt Duke very much at all. Duke still has one of the best overall bodies of work in the entire country, even with the loss to North Carolina. Duke now 7-2 against ranked opponents on the season. Its 2 losses are obviously, like we just mentioned, on the road by 3 points against North Carolina. And then its first loss of the season came on December 20th at Madison Square Garden to Texas Tech. Duke fell 82-81 in that one. In both those games, the free throw line, a very decisive factor. Duke got a plethora of attempts, as it has all season, from the line against the Red Raiders, but went just 17 of 29. That's a 59% clip. UNC committed just 1 foul against Duke in the second half of that game. Duke didn't attempt a single free throw through the entire second frame, went 5 of 6 just the entire game. North Carolina went 11 of 14. Obviously, that played major dividends. So like we talked about, Duke is 10-2 in quad 1, 13-2 across the first 2 quadrants, 8-0 in quad 3 and 4, obviously, number 3 in the net. Duke actually picked up another quadrant 1 victory without actually playing. This is something we've talked about on previous shows. The net rankings are currently changing, so Duke's 10-2 record in quadrant 1 can change all the time. Right now, it is 10-2 in quadrant 1. Picked up another one over the weekend without actually playing. Just one of its former opponents turned into a quadrant 1 game. So the next team's up in terms of quadrant 1 victories. Duke leads the nation with 10. Arizona and Michigan. Michigan at number 1 in the net. Arizona at number 2, both with 8 quadrant 1 victories. Those are the next teams up after Duke in terms of quadrant 1 wins. Duke has 2 more than any other team in college basketball, which plays major, major dividends on Selection Sunday. The net rankings are arguably the most important factor that the selection committee uses in terms of seeding, because it factors in things like scoring margin, obviously home, away, or neutral site, and obviously the level of opponent. That's what the quadrants are for. So more quadrant 1 wins essentially just means you're playing tougher competition, and Duke is beating the toughest competition in basketball by definition based on its resume. So Duke, like we just said, arguably the best resume in college basketball, not definitively, despite having 2 more quadrant 1 wins than any other team in the country. The only reason, in my opinion, that you can't definitively say Duke has the best resume in the country is because it doesn't have that signature perennial national title contender victory. It hasn't played a true, top 3 to 5 team in the country and gotten a win against them. Although maybe you could argue they have after Monday night. Kansas took down previously 23-0 Arizona on Monday night, 82-78. And Duke's neutral court victory against Kansas is now looking like one of the better wins of any team in college basketball. Duke took down Kansas 78-66 at Madison Square Garden as part of the Champions Classic back in November. And Kansas had a bit of a rocky start to the 25-26 campaign. After the loss to Duke, the record went to 3-2. Kansas was ranked number 24 in the AP poll at the time of that game, again on November 18th. Kansas eventually dropped out of the AP poll entirely, but has made a complete surge back into the conversation as true national title contenders. Takes down Arizona at Allen Fieldhouse without Darren Peterson, 82-78. Darren Peterson also did not suit up against the Blue Devils in Duke's win over Kansas. North Carolina also owns a win over Kansas. That came in Chapel Hill. Duke took down Kansas at Madison Square Garden very early on in the season. But the fact that Kansas just picked up a win over arguably the best team in college basketball, the only remaining undefeated power conference team in college basketball, Arizona, got out to a 23-0 start, the best start in Big 12 history, before falling to the Jayhawks on Monday night. So that is probably Duke's best win on the entire season. Kansas is now number 13 in the net. If you want to go based off the net, Michigan State is the second best win for the Blue Devils. They're number 12 in the net. Duke took down Michigan State on the road, so you could argue that was their best win. Duke also took down Florida, which is number 9 in the net, at Cameron Indoor Stadium. Again, Jon Scheyer has never shied away from giving his guys a gauntlet of a non-conference slate, and Duke absolutely cruised through it with minimal issues. But again, Duke is just lacking that perennial national title contender victory. You could consider Florida in that conversation. You could probably put Michigan State, and I think you can now put Kansas in there based on what they just did without Darren Peterson. But a true heavyweight powerhouse team in college basketball. Duke does not have that win yet, but it will have the opportunity to get that win through the remainder of the season, which we will get into right now. So as the net rankings currently stand, Duke has 5 quadrant 1 games remaining on its regular season slate. The first one will come against Clemson, number 20 Clemson. That was actually a quadrant 2 game up until this week. That has moved into a quadrant 1 game again because the net rankings are constantly shifting. Duke will take on Clemson at Cameron Indoor Stadium. That is a quadrant 1 game. Then the one non-conference game remaining in quadrant 1 for the Blue Devils, Duke will take on number 2 Michigan in Washington, D.C. in late February. That is the opportunity for the Blue Devils to probably cement the best resume in college basketball and probably lock itself up for a 1 seed in the NCAA tournament, given it doesn't slip up and fall in quadrant 2 or even quadrant 3, depending on how the ACC tournament plays out. But that will be the opportunity for Duke to cement itself as a top 2 to 3 team in the sport. Michigan has been arguably the most dominant team in the country. It beat 3 ranked opponents by over 30 points. It's obviously one of the best teams in the country, certainly firmly in the mix to be a number 1 seed in the NCAA tournament. Probably the 2 best players in the sport. You can make that argument between Cameron Boozer and Yaxel Lendeborg will be in that matchup. So another fantastic game for Duke. That will come in late February out of conference. And then the remaining 3 quadrant 1 opportunities in conference for Duke will be at home against number 15 Virginia, at NC State, which was really, really surging late in conference play before the Wolfpack got destroyed by Louisville last night. NC State now 18-7 on the campaign, 9-3 in conference play, had won 6 in a row before falling at Louisville 118-77 on Monday night. And then Duke will close out the season, obviously, at home against number 11 North Carolina. That will be the team's last quadrant 1 opportunity. So a plethora of games, plethora of opportunities for Duke to cement its resume, its 1 seed resume, and a chance for Duke to really, really cement itself as a top 2 to 3 team in the country. Because as we've talked on previous shows, it seems sometimes like Duke's falling under the radar as a true national title favorite, despite its nation's best 10 quadrant 1 victories and what it's done to ranked teams so far this season, and having an elite coach in Jon Scheyer, and having the National Player of the Year frontrunner in Cameron Boozer. But that will be the opportunity for Duke to really turn heads and will probably be the best game of the college basketball season. So Duke fans, get excited for that. Get excited for the rest of the season. First, Duke will have to take on Pitt at 9 p.m. on Tuesday night. Again, this is being recorded before that game happens, but Pitt, one of the weaker teams in the ACC, can assume Duke can get out of there with a victory. If not, that will be detrimental for the team's 1 seed case, obviously. That is going to do it from us here today at the Duke Blue Devils Insider Podcast. My name is Hugh Strain, your daily host, as well as beat writer at Duke Blue Devils on SI. We thank you so much for joining us today, as well as every day. Make sure to check us out at si.com/college/Duke every single day to get your latest on the Duke Blue Devils. My name is Hugh Strain, and I'll see you tomorrow.